All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
It is Friday, and if we didn't officially announce it on a Wheel of Time episode, we have moved this to Friday now because of our schedules. Uh, but we're talking New Spring, and we're getting to a fun part. I think I got the right books. I got Beautiful Trouble, because that seems to describe Moiraine here in the next several chapters. A little bit of Marcus Aurelius, because that's land needs all he can get. And Thinking in Bets, how to make good decisions with little information, which is kind of the theme for the book going onward.
Yeah, and it is it really is kind of a microcosm, a condensed version of the overarching theme that has been memed since then about the lack of information is kind of the root of all the problems of the series. And
Well, it was communication in the meme, but
yes, it was, and you can you can kind of see both avenues there of the lack of communication. That there are times you want to scream at the book, and we've talked about this with when the girls and the guys split off and they're kind of having their own story arcs, and even when they come together, they're not sharing information when they absolutely should. But on the other hand, there are times where you realize people don't know who to trust. People don't.
well, in that situation with the splitting and then coming back together, this is one of the downfalls of Dogma, because the things they wouldn't share with each other are all things they thought the others would shun them for.
Mm,
Perrin with his
good point.
wolves, Matt with the dagger, Rand knowing he can channel, uh, or figuring it out as he went along. So it's yeah, it's a state of just people being people, but also in the social situation they were in.
But then there are also times where it's not inexplicable. It's inexplicable from an outsider logical looking in. It's not inexplicable because he does a good job setting up, and that's what we open up here with this first um the first chapter we're gonna go over, chapter 14. Um, what the setup being uh how much they have to learn after they've been raised, and one of the things is they all have their special secret weaves.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on a second. You're supposedly all on the same side and the side of um the light, and especially some of the things they do keep secret. It's all right, look, I understand if maybe um uh certain kind of borderline type things like the eavesdropping type things or whatever.
Or
All right.
Leandrin's trick.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, but you have to assume that okay, so we never see this, but you can kind of let your mind wander of, I wonder what special secret weaves the Greens have. Well, they're the Battle Ajah, so that that would conceivably be things that would help any Aes
Popping
Sedai,
heads.
that would
Ooh.
help any Aes Sedai better protect herself.
Smishing heads and squishing faces. Remember that?
So the fact that they keep things secret as a matter of course just really really tells you what kind of an organization you're dealing with. And I
Well,
think I
again,
mentioned
look at the
this.
whole structure.
Yeah.
Everything's equal, but remember women. Subterfuge. What was it? Subterfuge, selective. I can't remember. It's like three S's in how women conflict. Everything's equal, but I'm going to do what I can to be more equal. And having your own weaves is a very great example of that.
Hmm.
We have this thing that nobody else knows about. Keep it to us, because that's our advantage. That's our advantage in this equal thing.
Yes. It's it doesn't make sense from the outsider looking in, but that how they're looking at it is, even if I can't articulate how this particular thing gives me an advantage. Just having it and the other side not knowing about it could be an advantage. So I'm going to hold on to that secret because I want all of, the thinking and bets. I want all the chips I can get stacked up over here because that gives me more leverage. Even more so in this kind of a poker game, because at least in real poker, you can see the chip stack. You know what you're up against. Even if you can't see the cards, all right, well, these are the stacks I'm going up against. So these are going to have to be my strategies going forward. You don't even know what the other side has as far as you know, uh, uh, liabilities and uh, positives and negatives, and so you're definitely thinking in the dark, and that's how they want it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you said you didn't have a note on chapter 14
No,
yet.
no, my bigger thoughts started in 15, but yeah, chapter 14 was to me was a setup for everything that happens afterwards.
Hmm.
We're getting her reasons for wanting to leave.
Yep.
Uh, and then basically it's kind of an action scene. We get the action of her leaving. We get her finally we get a great example of her using wordplay for the
Yeah.
first time. Telling the truth without telling the truth. You better not cross any of those bridges. Well, I'm not going to cross a bridge. Which you would think, who was it? The Amiralin that said that?
The new one, I think so.
Yeah, because you would think she would be savvy enough to say
Yes,
you just can't leave the city. Period.
as you say, mother. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
It can't be uncommon for people to take a boat off the island.
but we also have talked at length about the arrogance of the Aes Sedai, and here you have well, how often are the girls underestimated in the beginning of the series because they're only novices, and then they're only accepted. You know, it never matters that you underestimated them before, and then they just keep underestimating them. This is a newly raised sister, and I'm the freaking Emerald, so
Mm-hmm.
you can see it to a degree.
Well, not only that, they don't have their full power yet. So it's definitely there's still also that power dynamic. I am above you in the hierarchy
Hmm.
as well. So not
Hmm.
only am I the cream of the crop here as far as actual status, but in the undertone status, I still beat you as well.
I also wonder if there's a good bit of projection going on as well, because I found the scene where, so it's 198 um where she has that interplay with Amarilyn, and when she goes back to tell Swan what's going on, where is it? She quotes the Amarilyn as saying, "As you know, we will have need of you soon." I have to think there's a fair bit of projection going on the part of these other sisters that are gearing up to use Moiraine to seize the throne of Karheen. Well, why wouldn't she want to go along with this? There's probably no thought in their minds that she would resist this, um, because who wouldn't want that power?
Mm-hmm.
To not only, the double power of being a queen, but also ruling openly as an Aes Sedai, which had
Well,
not happened for centuries.
there's the projection there, but there's also just the fact that she's Karhinen. And that
That's a
look
good
at
point.
every other interaction we have with male and female, other than Dobrain. We and that's pretty much he's the only one that's not clawing for power, and even
Hmm.
he is still scheming to some degree.
Yes.
He just knows better than to try to take it. He knows he will be more powerful as the Dragon Reborn's man than as the king.
Hmm.
And so it's not his ambition that's holding him back. It's the fact that he's just smart.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also, we kind of talked about this last time we talked about him, was that I think there's an element of the Civil War, and then the war, which was going on for months, and then uh the war against the Aiel, I think kind of remade Dobrain. That,
Mm,
you know,
yeah.
he had a very harsh dose of reality, and he sees Rand as the cure for all that. So why would he do anything but support Rand, knowing what things could go back to?
Hmm.
Um, whereas the others that we see scheming, it's just ingrained in their blood, is how it's described by a lot of the people in the series, and it certainly seems that way because they are so blind to the potential downside of what they're doing. But they don't see that. They don't look at it that way.
Well,
Uh,
that's the dissonance of, yeah, that would happen to anybody else that did this, but me,
yeah,
I would do
yeah,
it right. The whole, well, communism just hasn't been done right yet. We're going to do it right this time.
yeah.
That's the thought. It's the same lack of awareness.
No, that's a good point because more we see inside Moraine's head when this subject is first broached several chapters ago, and she immediately sees all the downsides. But the people pushing this are, look how far we've come, look how strong we are now, the tower, the Aes Sedai, um, the kind of the reign of man is kind of falling. We've talked about this, and this was a major component of the beginning of the Great Hunt. Was Ingtar talking about, you know, you can ride for days, if not weeks now, and never see a soul across places that used to be countries, that
Hmm.
used to have good sized cities, and it's just gone. So there probably is an element of, yeah, as Moraine is thinking, no Aes Sedai has ruled openly for centuries because it's always a disaster when it's tried. But of course, no, we're better now. We're stronger now.
Hmm.
And we will make this work.
And in some things, you can say that. Like now we have the technology.
Hmm.
We're looking at like cryo freezing or things like, we're closer to that now. We probably could try to do it again. Whereas in like 1920, when they said, "Hey, we can make a freezer," I bet you if we freeze somebody, they'll be able to be thawed out later. We didn't really quite have it yet. So you could
Yeah.
do that with something with something that's technologically based, but something that's ideologically based, we're probably just barking up the same damn tree every time.
Yeah, it's almost like we're still human and always have been, you know. So so that's why history keeps seeming to repeat itself because it's still being done by humans. All right, so on to chapter 15. Um, well, before that, um, I like the Moraine's train of thought here in the closing of chapter 14 that uh going through all the terrible things, all the potential negatives, he just disobeyed no matter how well she bandied her words. On top of that, of which she almost certainly had an assassin trailing her. Her knees should have been shaking in fear of Saren, if not Master Gorthanes. But as Tarvalon and the tower began to shrink behind her, all she felt was a great burst of freedom and excitement. Um,
Okay, so this actually brings us to one of Scott's comments, which is very relevant here. He says, "Has it occurred to you just how much Moiraine and Matt are alike? Different
mm,
backgrounds, different ways, but their actual characters are sympathetically similar." To which I actually had to respond then while it was still in my head. I was like, actually, yes, indirectly, because I made the parallel between Matt and Nynaeve, and then you made the parallel between Nynaeve and Moiraine.
mhm.
So we were picking up the same sauce, it just in kind of a roundabout way. But yeah, that's kind of the impression, and he put it into words before we did, that I was kind of going for when I was talking about Moiraine as the rebel in the first couple
Mhm.
episodes of this.
Yeah, that uh and she was off to find the boy child. The the thing that in the series motivates her to such an extreme that
she's
kind of scary. She's cold, at least
well,
outwardly.
and this is why, even though I have my beefs with the way the blue are described, it would probably be the best one for me too, and for Matt if there was if there
Hmm.
was a male version of it. It's because there's no plan, there's a direction. And
Hmm.
that's the way kind of pattern thinking right brain people go. We don't make a step-by-step plan, we just pick a direction and then we figure it out. And we just neurotically happen to think of everything that can go wrong along the way, but as she's doing in that last paragraph. But yeah, she picked a direction and she said, you know what, here's the rules, but here's what the rules don't say I can't do.
Hmm.
And she's gonna go that way, and that's what Matt does, and that's where the parallel is very, very, very strong.
Yeah, and then that last sentence, she was off on an adventure as grand as any ever undertaken by an Aes Sedai. So that's still kind of her first
Cadsuane may
thought
have
years.
a beef with that, but
Yeah, but so far as Moiraine knows,
Mhm.
um, but you also see that kind of um train of thought, that motivating factor that can lead someone like Leanne to later, when she gets stilled and then healed, switch to the green, because there is that element is there. It's just then kind of focused a little more than greens tend to be. All right, so chapter 15, we get the dudes. Um, so where's your first
Okay, so
note
it
come in?
sounds loud to me, but can you hear my son screaming upstairs
Nope,
to his friends playing games?
nope,
Okay, they're playing like Minecraft or something, and they're yelling at each other. But
of course.
yeah, okay,
Um,
so we're with the dudes in Canluon.
yep. So I it's it's more great Jordan showing not telling that, and something I've been harping on, which is you don't just explain directly to the reader or the viewer, because that doesn't make any sense. It takes you out of the moment, of the world that you're trying to create. So there's kind of this what the heck is going on here thing that's going on, that it takes quite a few pages to unravel, because no one's just going to come right out and say it. They wouldn't do that. So it takes a bit for Lan to finally realize what's going on. And that we've also already established there is already an in-world reason why these people would just jump up and, you know, pledge themselves to Lan. I stand ready, to follow you, assuming that he would take their pledges, assuming that he would take them on, assuming that he would know what the heck is going on. And then it's, slowly revealed he has no clue what's going on, because this lady's maneuvering behind his back.
Yeah, this lady of a relationship type that is not standard for our Western audiences.
Yeah, I am not sure if there's a real world parallel that this is coming from, because
Well, and this is
this is
where
kind
I
of a
made
new
my
one on
first
me.
note because this is where so on marriage, just from other or social issues, it's a wonder here that Jordan didn't write in polygamy here, because the whole basis behind polygamous societies from a developmental standpoint is they typically are societies where young men die young. So there are less men to marry when it comes to marrying age or becoming fathers and grandfathers. And the borderlands would be a great place for that to be a mainstay. And then he has these other unconventional things like the woman basically raping you when you're an adolescent, and now you're bound to her. So not only she take advantage of you in that way, but you're
Yeah.
pretty much a slave in that regard to this person from then on by custom. And so we've got this weird ritual, but at the same time, we didn't have the one that makes sense here because it makes sense with the Aiel too, because young men die young a lot.
Mhm.
So it makes sense that you would probably have more than one female to a male ratio in the relationship market. Yeah, it didn't dawn on me till the weird stuff here that I was like, this would have been fitting to be in the
Mhm.
Borderlands as well.
Yeah, but the way it's generally portrayed when we actually see it is that I think they kind of go the other route, which is you get married young, you start a family young because there is so much death. That so
Yeah, but it's
yeah.
not just starting a family young, it's raising the family. Like
Mhm.
we look at the Inuits uh in the real world, the woman would have two husbands and they were never allowed to go whaling together because whaling was so dangerous. So the chances you lose a husband is very high, but the chances you lose two in separate incidents is a lot lower. So that's the way they're structured, and they make sure that that male to female ratio is intact with infanticide. But uh, that's the kind of the way of it. So when you see these situations where men die young, that tends
Mhm.
to be where we err towards these unconventional relationships, and we see that a little bit later, page 209. He's basically talking about how he's the bull in a cuck relationship a lot of the time, and Lan is.
Mhm.
He's like, these women find my bed because of these characteristics of me, and they're married.
It's not unlike what you talked about with Matt and uh Tenobia, Queen Tenobia.
Mm-hmm.
That
Dylan.
who
Tenobia
was
was
Tenobia?
Kenchiko.
Oh yeah, okay. That was that one. Thank you. Um I sounded wrong in my head, but that was the name that popped up. Anyway, so
It was the two similar cities
yeah.
in the girl
So
stories. Yeah.
the similar to how she was attracted to Matt, it's the same kind of idea. Um and uh I just get sidetracked by looking
Okay.
at something I was going to bring up.
So
But
I'll continue, and you get your thought back. Since we brought up in our last one where I brought up my random thought, which was women practice mate switching because men die young, but now we're living longer. Oh damn it,
mhm,
right? Uh, that's actually seemingly to me what's going on here with the older woman attaching herself to the young man via this ritual in a place where the fact that her husband is alive at that point is probably nil in Malkir, because
mm.
it was the front line to the blight. And so this is seems like a cultural mate switching, but it's done in such a weird way that it's kind of rapey, you know.
Yeah, the cougar widow, um, making the young boy a man.
And then she
Um,
maintains her family line by making sure she can choose who he marries later, as we see coming up.
that part was of the custom was a little fuzzy to me because I wasn't quite clear how it usually worked with how it's going here. Um, that it,
The
I don't.
way I understood it, and we'll get to it. We'll kind of put a peg
Mhm.
on it after the overall thought, and then we'll get to it as we get to that spot. Is it can go anyway, but it seems like that's the intelligent way to go.
Um, yeah, that'll definitely get more into it later when he actually meets up with her here in a few chapters.
Mhm.
Um, the thing that got me sidetracked was that on and we've seen this before and it makes a lot of sense. The the fatalism of these very dangerous warrior cultures.
Mhm.
The Aiel have it, and then uh the the Borderlanders have it too, and for the Valkyrie, it's kind of an extra dose of severity because they're a countryless people now that they were nearly wiped out completely. Um, that the the idea of peace in death is the only peace you will ever find, and it becomes a part of their formal societal interactions. You know, it isn't a, a bless you kind of thing like we might have
Hmm.
today. It's a uh, there is peace in the mother's last embrace, Lan responded with equal formality, touching Hilton Heart. May she welcome us home one day, Saroku finished. Um, no one really wished for the grave, but that was the only place to find peace in the Borderlands. So I do think that that ties into kind of this what you were talking about, which was these to us very bizarre customs, but you're talking about a place that um as part of their formal greeting and goodbye talks about finding peace in death.
Hmm. Yeah, it's that whole, be polite because you'll never know when you're going to see that person again, or don't end
Hmm.
on bad words. It's always giving burial rites because you never know if you're going to have that chance with that person. Uh, but kind of stepping back for just a quick second, and this is because this is important as we go forward. This thought, uh, on page 204, on second from the last paragraph, Lan kept silent. A certain reputation clung to Malkiri, who still wore the Hidori, though not for banditry, but reminding Bakuma would only send him into an even blacker humor for days. He's talking about probably duels and fights broken out over honor,
Hmm.
and the peculiar honor of the Malkiri people is even hard for the other Borderlanders to get right.
That's a good point.
And we're gonna see that when it comes to the Moiraine interactions with Lan, because
Yes.
so much of the disconnect and communication is from his standpoint is like, everybody should know this. This is just the way it is. This is how we are. But realistically, Malkir's dead. Nobody
Yeah.
knows Malkiri ways except the Malkiri.
Hmm. Yeah, it would be odd even for the Shinaran, which were the closest because they were
Mm-hmm.
the closest geographically. Um, yeah. Uh, so any other thoughts on 15 before we move on to chapter 16?
No.
All right. Um, so on to chapter 16 where we meet another Malkiri.
Mm-hmm.
Um, though he's an interesting one I find because um Ryan, whatever. Uh,
Rhine is how they pronounced it in the audiobook.
okay.
Yeah.
He Land tolerates him even though we have seen before, and we see from Land's point of view here that he he looks down um on 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 him for putting aside the Valkyrie customs of primarily of dress, that um he dresses like an era felon. That's where he's made his home, and that's how he presents himself, even though he is Valkyrie. Um, but Ryan also seems to know enough to know, you know, I get the impression that Ryan probably knows how Land looks at him, but isn't going to let him bother him. So he knows enough to know where not to step in terms of honor and custom, but then is also not as concerned about it as Bakuma and Lan are. So he's just going to do his own thing. So he's kind of able to get away with it more than other people that we have seen thus far. Like, we just saw there at the gate of how they kind of blew up because what are you pledging to? You don't even know what you're pledging to. Or the other guy, what you've cut your hair, you're not wearing the Hadori, and so what makes you think you have a place to pledge, to land?
Funny, this Ryan guy reminds me, and it took me a while to go back in the memory banks. It was way back in Sega CD. Uh, the Silver Star, Lunar Silver Star, Kyle, and they were
Mm.
always making dirty jokes in that game, and the one of the characters would always go, "And as we digress," but Kyle was always usually the one who started the dirty jokes. And I
As
was
we
like,
digress
yeah,
indeed.
as Ryan has described, I was like, and as he acts going on, I was like, oh, that's like Kyle. Of course, we all know a douche named Kyle. That's the one of the rules of life, you know.
Yep. All right. Um, there is a bit of a moment though here on page 215 of recognition by Lan that okay, maybe it's not all everybody else's fault. So down at the bottom when he goes out to the after he's gotten the news of what the heck is going on, um, uh, what's going on with what's her name? Um, who's the she? Lady Errol. When he when he finds out what's going on there, he goes out to the stable to pace and think, and the groom is giving him side eye and kind of edging away. Land Grimace, was she that afraid of a man wearing the Hadori? Did she think his pacing a threat? Abruptly, he became aware of his hands running over the long hilt of his sword, aware of the tightness in his own face. Pacing? No, he had been in the walking stance called leopard in high grass, used when there were enemies on all sides. So he doesn't do himself any favors as much as he, kind of uh gets annoyed at the looks and even knowing there is kind of a dark reputation of people who wear the Hadori, uh, you know, it's not an undeserved reputation. Even
Mhm.
even for Lan with the way he acts. He's a very um dangerous and imposing individual. I mean, even his friend Rhine, it's when he brings up Lady Errol, uh, he has to quickly hey, easy man, Ryan said. I didn't mean wisely he abandoned that line. Burn me, do you mean to say you haven't heard? So even he has to very quickly smooth things over with Lan.
Mhm. Go back one page to 213. Speaking of imposing land, this is one of two places he makes this statement in his head in this book. Uh, Bottom of page 213, near the end of the last full paragraph. If Lyra did share his bed tonight, as it seemed certain, she would discover there was nothing shy or retiring about him once they were in bed. Yet the woman chose when to enter the bed and when to leave. And I've made in my little notes, the only thing sacred between the sheets is consent. Woman enters, the woman leaves, but then it's on. And Lan
Mm,
in his head has showed confidence in his bedroom skills twice in this book. This is the first
hmm
time.
hmm
And good on you, Nynaeve. And then we get to the relationship with Nynaeve. Remember, he's in charge in the
Yes.
bed in Nynaeve's relationship because of the way their marriage was. So,
Yep. Um, but there's an extra element there of the um just how serious the chivalry of I mean we've seen a little bit of this with the Shinaran, who are the closest to the Valkyrie that we've actually seen in the series, but um even more so with Lan and the Valkyrie and those who still follow those ways of it is uh there's not a subservience there. There's a balance. There's kind of a dance of, first this one leads and then that one leads based on these cultural rules.
And it's a good balance because women need the comfort of their consent, but at the same time, they want that veracity.
Hmm.
And it's a very rare thing to get both in the same person.
That's a good point. And so it's going to lend to the reputation of Valkyrie that it's very rare to get that in the same person unless you're in a culture that drills that into you from an early age, which is what we get the impression is the way Valkyrie used to work, before they got scattered and nearly wiped out. All right. Where's your next note?
My next note is on 216, where he's describing going into the void
Mm,
on when he starts meditating, achieving the Code, and then the effect that has, where he becomes aware of everything. He sees all the patterns. He has a very broad focus at that point. Uh, this is one of the things that when we look at our other main characters from the other books, and I don't want to just analyze New Spring. I want to analyze New Spring in relation to the other books, because into the main story we talk about Matt versus Rand and Matt versus Perrin and Moiraine versus so and so, and you saw this with Moiraine earlier. And Lan is the superstructure. He's the order. He's the order amongst chaos, where Moiraine is the adventurer. And he has to assume the Code to see the patterns of the world, to feel the world around him in a certain way. Where someone like Matt or Moiraine, so I'll talk about Matt first because it's easier. He's the jazz player.
mm,
He's the best fighter without forms. Lan needs the forms. Lan has a mastery of the forms. Rand needed the forms. He needed to become a master of the forms. Matt just needs space. He needs space and his quick reaction time plus a little luck.
mhm.
Moiraine, there's a reason why she failed every time her and Swan would practice, but then she succeeded when she was in the Turing Grail,
That's a good point.
because it became living the life versus structuring a test. It was no longer a standardized test. It was live or die.
I meant to bring that up. That's a good point that we might have gotten to earlier because I meant to have a thought along those lines a couple chapters earlier, because one of the first things Maureen is talking about there in chapter 14 is how difficult it is for her to get the trick of ignoring heat or cold.
Mm-hmm.
And he's mentioned it before, uh when we finally learn it. And I think we actually learn it from Rand first, rather than the girls, that it's just, but the way he describes it in the series is just, it's a trick of concentration. It has nothing to do with the power. It's a trick of concentration. And there we finally get like a more detailed explanation. And it is very similar to what we see here with Lan of entering the Code. It is a very similar but different process. And your point there explains why it has been so difficult for Moraine to get the hang of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's a step by step process. And realistically, being the person who kind of thinks that way, that gets you get bored by step 3, and
Mhm.
you lose your train of thought, and it's like squirrel.
It,
You know,
I hadn't thought of that. You've put me on another train of thought here. That also explains why she's so good at the game, because that is
it's
a
clearly it's all patterns.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, there is no manual for it. There are guidelines,
Mm-hmm.
but you're in the moment. It's improvisation because you're reading the other person. Like even when they go to get their dresses made, there are guidelines, there are proprieties. You're supposed to treat the seamstress in a particular way, but then you actually have to do it,
Well,
and
and
it's
that
going to
that that
change by the moment.
you used a great word, improvisation. Uh, in the show Lucifer, uh, semi spoiler alert if you've never watched it, but one of the characters does improv as like a hobby, and he's a cop, and they wanted him to do a stand up routine as a kind of a cover for a case. And he in that scene explains the difference between improv and stand up. And it's exactly that. Stand up is all calculated, all planned, everything is scripted. And then but improv you can't because you're completely working off somebody else. So it's a completely different type of comedy, and one person that's good at one may not be good at the other.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Um, I had a thought there and it's gone again. All right, whatever. Moving on.
Okay. You were talking about him reaching the code E and structuring everything in order, and then
Nope, that was it. It's your thought on the Cody reminded me that I'd meant to talk about Moiraine learning how to ignore heat and cold and the interesting tidbit of her having difficulty with it. All right, back to where we are here with Lan about to get ganked by what was it, like 6 guys?
yeah, 6 men were striding across the otherwise empty yard. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, do we ever get a revelation of who sent these guys or why they're here? Because we get a speculation, but I don't know. I don't recall later in the book it actually getting revealed or confirmed in any way.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think so either. Maybe I'll have to keep look for it up.
Yeah,
Because he
because
he
the
assume he assumes it's Lady Adane, but we see later that it doesn't seem like she would have wanted that unless she knew he
yes,
would survive.
yep,
But I
yep,
can't
yep.
I can't think of anybody who it could have been other than that.
hmm Um,
Oh, I know who it could have been. I Yeah, but we need to get to the end of the book.
yeah.
Yeah.
My other thought was that he somehow got. Oh wait, yeah, I think that is. You're right. I think I know what you're talking about. I think that is the confirmation, but it was in Jordan's own way, which meant obliquely.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
we'll specify in spoilers. 6 men after Lan origin. Okay.
Okay. Uh, all right. So, do you have anything else on chapter 16?
No, no, no.
Okay.
Just badassery. He kicks ass, and even Bakumo without a sword does at his old age.
Um, all right. So, chapter 17, we switch back to Moraine, and I one of my favorite things about the book as a whole is just seeing Moraine's human side because you only get glimpses of it in the series before before her encounter with Lanfear and she goes away. So you know it's there. You see enough to know, no, there is a human heart there, but she is so focused on what she deems the most important thing in the world that she can't let her own feelings get in the way. And we see quite a bit of that through this book. And here as she goes along, um as she goes along, trying to find uh these children who could potentially be the dragon. Um and if you were paying attention during the series, you're also starting to get hints here of the unpleasantness after the Aiel War,
Mm-hmm.
is when you start to get the hints of this. Um, and it kind of occurred to me, reading through this chapter, there these couple of chapters is, um, I think it was entirely on purpose that Jordan made a big point of how good Sawan was at puzzles and how Moraine's mind worked a little different. So she was very talented and very good in some things, but because if you know, if you've put together, even if it's your first time reading through, if you've put together what the unpleasantness was, which there are enough hints there to figure it out, or if you've spent way too much time on the message boards, you'll immediately know what's going on here and be wondering, she's one of the smartest people in the series. Why doesn't she see this? Well, she does eventually, but that's not the way her mind works. This is Sawan's thing, but Sawan is caught up in the tower.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I don't want to fast forward too much, but I am trying to get us through a bit because uh it really gets fun when Moiraine finally encounters Lan.
Yeah.
So I was hoping to
So
get to that point before we
the important thing we
stopped.
can't skip over is she encounters Marine
Hmm.
and Cadsuane, and what was the third one's name?
Uh,
Laurel.
Laurel.
Yeah. So she encounters them and gets bad heebie-jeebie vibes about Cadsuane,
Hmm.
and that's important because we need to place those three here at this time
Hmm.
going forward. But it also sparks her to want to leave. And is this where Swan finds her?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
someone finds her here in a second.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
She does on 2:30.
because then she has to, and that's what makes her realize I got to skedaddle here.
Yeah.
Um, I, I, I like the heebie-jeebie vibes that Maureen gets from Cadswin because they're not unwarranted from her perspective,
Hmm.
from either perspective, because the reason she's getting them, I think, is because Cadswin knows more than Moiraine does. I mean, she's the one who tells us about the unpleasantness. That's where we get the term from. So I think Cadswin is savvy to what is going on to a degree, probably to a greater degree than any other Aes Sedai, because I doubt other Aes Sedai are looking at it or looking for it. I've One of my kind of pet theories is that Cadsuane knew about the Black Ajah, admitted it way before anyone else, and was something of a Black Ajah hunter. Um, and I think that's kind of what Cadswin is doing here, is trying to get a feel for who is this new sister that I know nothing about because I've been out of the tower for so long. And so she's acting oddly. So I'm going to scrutinize her. And Cadswin's way of scrutinizing is to kind of be a bully.
Well, careful there on that thought because in the regular series we don't know that much about Catswin yet.
True.
So we
That's a
don't
good
want to
point.
get ahead of where we are in the other series. Again, I'm trying to read this from a where it fits into where we are kind of thing. Now, put a peg in that in what we
Hmm.
see from Cadswin later, so that way it all comes together into a bigger picture. Because I think this book helps round out that character a little bit. But
Yep. Yep. So here is the top of
and
230
now
is
Marine was the mistress of novices under Tamra.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I got her mixed up with the one met that was with Elida when they met Moiraine and
Yeah,
Swan.
I think that was
That,
Myron,
yeah, I just looked it up.
M-I-E. Yeah.
Mylene or something.
Okay.
Mylin. Yeah. So Mylin, Marine, I got those mixed up. So I thought it was that one that was reading the mind of her warder, and rechecking on that took away a plot hole I thought I had at the end.
Okay. Um,
But
yeah,
yeah.
so 230 is where Cadsuane has gotten them out of the common room and is scrutinizing Moiraine. Most new sisters, the legendary Green said abruptly, hardly remove their shawls to sleep or bathe. But here you are without shawl or ring in one of the most dangerous spots you could choose short of the blight itself. Why? Um, she's acting oddly. Cadsuane wants to know why. What is going on here? Are you up to no good? Is what I think Cadsuane is doing here. But of course, Moiraine can't know her motive. She can't know what she's doing. And she is rightfully looking over her shoulder, uh, kind of jumping at shadows because she knows there are some nefarious forces out there that she needs to be careful of. All right.
Okay, so that plus Swan talking to her and gets her on the road.
Yep. Well, and then Sawan showing up kind of gets things moving quicker to get us to the climax of the book because, as I said, she's the one. Um, okay, hold up. Before we get there, so the end of chapter 17 is um is Moiraine wondering where is it? Here we go. Um Cadsuan had not sidestepped a hair in her threat. She had said it right out, so by the 3 she meant it exactly. Incredible. Was it happenstance that she had mentioned Mylin Argania and Corinne Nagashi? They were two of Tamara's searchers. Could Cadsuan be another? Either way, she had very neatly cut Moraine out of the hunt for the next week or more. If she actually went with blah blah blah. Okay, so if Cadsuan knew about her and so on, if so you see the thought process for why you don't just come out and say things. Why there's always this information gap, why there's always this lack of communication, because it's a very scary world. Um, but then it gets even scarier when Sawan shows up, um, because Sawan is the puzzler. She's the one who puts the puzzles together. And when she lays it out, Moiraine can see it immediately as well. Um, but uh, um, Moiraine is kind of one of those that she can solve a hard puzzle, but you got to give her that first hint to start her going, and that's what Sawan is. Um, let's see. And so this is in the conversation with Sawan is where it all gets laid out of Tamara supposedly died in her sleep too, but I know for a fact Mylan didn't, and someone lied about it straight out. Well, lied about it or is being misled about it. So who could do that? Who could kill someone without a mark? And of course, that leads to the Black Ajah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and uh, so now the added element of, well, we thought we were just having to be super careful because of people who wouldn't care what the prophecy said, would be scared of the dragon and want to kill him while he's still a baby. Now we have an added moment, an added threat. And as Moiraine um and Sawan are talking, I mean, even Cadsuan could be black. We can't trust anybody. So
Mm-hmm.
now it's going to paint that in a whole new light. Um, all right. Anyway, moving on, and then she skedaddles again and heads out of there. Uh, all right. So I want to stop it there so we can spend more time with Moiraine and Lan's interaction. So got us up to that, so we can jump right into that next time of them finally meeting. Plus, I feel like garbage, so I think I've talked about all I can.
All right. So if you're reading for the first time, we might go into some spoilers here. And we don't have many comments to go through.
Mhm.
But when we already did one of them, that was the Matt parallel. I've always imagined the effect of the oath on a person being like zipped into a wetsuit that's a size too small. Yeah, that seems
Hmm.
like it would be a very, very good
Ow.
description. Yeah. Uh, uh, did you have any other spoilers other than who might have sent the six men?
No.
Okay, so six men after Lan in this town where it's very obvious it's public knowledge that he's there since the guy at the front gate made a big deal about it. Uh, and we've got Moiraine in the town at the same time trying to kill the person
Hmm.
she tries to kill later. So uh, it would be no surprise if those were her men.
Yeah, and the what made me say, "Oh yeah, duh," was you know, having that page open and like the page before is when Ryan says, "Ah, you're still lucky with the women I see." And that's what makes it ultimately click for Moiraine is people who were unusually lucky are dying or being
Mm-hmm.
killed. And that's what finally makes it click for her. And that's when I realized, oh, duh. Um, that's why someone was after Lan because as we kind of find out later, the Black doesn't know Tamara was able to keep the part back that he's just a newborn. So they don't know how old of a child they're looking for. Could even be a girl as we find out later.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So for those that are keeping up, I started rewatching the series. Episode one.
Ouch.
Uh, it didn't seem like a big deal the first time I watched it, but it was afterwards that Rand and Egwene practically broke up that first episode. But then they went on as if they're still together and he would go
Hmm.
anywhere for her. We already talked about Nynaeve not ever have gotten the braid if the true test to get your braid was to surrender to the river, because that's why she can't channel, because she can't do that at that point. Okay, so this one pissed me off. Nynaeve tells a story to Moiraine about her mentor going to Tar Valon because she could listen to the wind and being rejected because she was poor.
I completely missed that.
Yeah, I missed it the first time I watched it too, and I was just like, wait a minute. No, the tower goes out and looks for women anywhere, anyhow,
It
any way that can channel.
isn't it isn't it the is it the very next episode or it's pretty soon after that the opening to this episode is the flashback to Sawan.
No, that's not the next episode yet.
Okay.
Because I'm on episode 4 and that hasn't happened yet.
Okay. So even within their own script, it's nonsensical because not only is Sawan dirt poor and we see it and we know it, not only does she become full Aes Sedai, she's the freaking Amarillan. It, it's asinine. What it is it's contrived. It's we need a reason to very quickly create the animosity between Nynaeve and Moiraine because that is a major component of the Eye of the World and of the first few books really is that animosity. And they did not have um frankly the talent to do it, to adapt the way Jordan actually did it. They didn't have the talent to do it. So they contrived a shorthand reason.
Yeah. Another thing that just kind of grated at me. Remember in Lord of the Rings where they talked about where things were forged and why it made it special, and you as the watcher kind of got it because everybody has read Tolkien, and if you haven't, you still got it was cool and it
Mhm.
made sense. Instead of saying this was a blade forged in the blight or something more specific like that, with Tam's injury, it was, oh, it's Trolloc poison.
Missed that
That for
too.
some reason that just that annoyed me because I'm like that's so cheap. It didn't lend the weight
You
of what it actually
you
is.
don't have to have read the series. You don't when you hear something like, "Oh, this was uh steel forged in the shadow of Thachandor." You don't have to know what that means to get that, oh, this is serious, this is bad, this is an evil place. That's the point of world building. That's the point of context clues, because you want to impress upon the audience that even before you learn what this place is, you can clue the audience in that this is bad.
And then the last thing that really annoyed me was when they left. They left like when everybody's sitting around and how the houses are still burning and everybody's gathered around. They left in the night because nobody approved. Here it was, okay, see you later, have fun in Tarvalon.
And it was a big deal that Rand talked to his father.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Yeah, and in the series, he's just like, go on, Rand.
but of course, part of the reason it was a big deal is that he stood up to Lan and Moiraine. That's one of your early clues that he's special, besides the fact that we're seeing the story from his point of view. So of course you can't do that, because then that would single Rand out, and they mystery boxes. They wanted mystery boxes because they're idiots.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one of the things they did in the first episode that ruined something later, episode 3. Okay, so episode 3, when Nynaeve, to skip ahead, when Nynaeve sneaks up on Lan and puts a knife to his neck, and he's like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna die," and he overreacts to everything at that point. He asks her, "How did you find us?" And remember, in the books, this is where you get the stories of her dad teaching her how to track
Mm-hmm.
and how to. They couldn't do that because they made her an orphan in the first one.
Uh,
So her answer was, "I said you could ask. I didn't say I was going to tell you." And that's where they left it.
couldn't remember if they ever if they addressed it again later. I was thinking they did, but oh geez.
No, because remember in the original story, when she's complaining about her mentor, she talks about how, or no, Moraine says, you're not from here. You were brought here by the previous wisdom as an orphan, as a baby.
Mm,
And so they took away the fact that she had a father and she was raised by her father. So now
yeah.
you have no answer to how she could track Land, how she could track them.
Well, it which cheapens both of them,
Mm-hmm.
because that is a major part of what makes Nynaeve special and a strong character, but then is also where and when Lan starts to look at her a little differently, which is what leads to their ultimately to their relationship.
But they had to do the orphan bit because she could be the dragon.
Mystery box. You
Mystery
people
box.
suck.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I was just going to go through episode 1, but that point that was in episode 3 was very pertinent
Yeah.
to. But yeah, so the little things that I'm seeing now that make it even more annoying. Matt is still. It sucks because he's actually one of the better actors in the series, but they made him so horribly that
Yeah.
I just can't unsee it, and it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. That is,
Well, don't worry, you get to unsee it here September 1st, because we'll have a whole new map.
yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, really looking forward to that.
And there is more stuff on season 2 out. I've been watching like interviews with some of the actors, and the lady we thought was going to be Varen is Varen. Uh, so the Aiel don't look good. It looks so cheap. I'm sorry. They're so excited about it, and they're like, "This is the best thing we've done." And I'm like,
Oh no. Oh no.
"No, Bane and Shade." I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen them act yet, but it's one's like a 6 foot tall Norwegian girl, and the other one is, I don't know, about an average height, maybe slightly taller than an average girl. And then Avienda's like this short little, uh, not even great looking girl. I don't know, but
Boy,
I don't know.
can't wait
You're
for
trying to
September
pick
1st.
trying to pick the cream of the crop of available women for Rand, and you pick her. I and Min was okay, but still not like I'm going to fall in love as the most powerful man in the world.
Hmm.
And I can't remember what Elaine looks like, but and
There,
gosh, I'm sorry. The more I watch this series, the more I hate the actor who plays Perrin.
he's
Perrin
especially
is
awful.
they have reduced Perrin to a semi-autistic introvert who who's really incompetent, extremely incompetent in every way. Just little things like when he's trying to light the fire when they get out of Eridol. It was
Good
like,
point.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah. And in the book, he can't get it lit because everything is wet, and he lost his flint and steel when he went in the river.
Which in the
And
show he's using a flint and steel and still can't light it.
mm, all right, well, that's all we've got for today. Ugh. Well, at least we started with good stuff with New Spring, and we ended on awfulness, but more good stuff next time because we get to the great interaction between Lan and Moiraine, which there's a lot of good things to talk about there.
I don't know.
So,
It's a little problematic. There's gender dynamics there and
oh
strength
no,
differences, and
oh no. Yep, yep, yep. Well, we'll give reason to be canceled yet again next time when we talk about that. So we'll
well,
see y'all
maybe
next.
as long as we use gender neutral language, we'll be fine.
Oh yes.
Yeah. All right. Later, guys.